Welcome back to Brojo Online. In this podcast, we're going to do a short course, if you will, on nice guy syndrome recovery from identifying the problem through to solving it all in one go. If you've tried your best to be a good person and ended up just tired, frustrated, exhausted, lonely, and no sense of self, this video is for you. I've been coaching people pleasers to become more confident and authentic since about 2013. In this video, we're going to break down why the system doesn't work and what you should do instead. This is the first in a 5-part series on nice guy syndrome, how to break free of it so that you're more confident, you have better relationships, and you get a really clear sense of who you actually are. It's going to be focused on practical guidance that you can actually use in real life to get immediate results. Before we go any further, make sure you get your free access to the Nice Guy Recovery course, the in-depth one that's in my Brojo community. You'll see the link in the description or the comments below. Here's what we're going to cover in this podcast. Why trying to please people doesn't work. Validation seeking, how your attachment style sabotages your confidence. How to be a more confident man. The roadmap to becoming that more confident man. And why building confidence by yourself is so difficult. Let's start assuming that you're beginning this journey without really knowing everything on defining what nice guy syndrome really is. Essentially, it's a cluster of traits built around people-pleasing and trying to get approval from others, to the point where it's become a personality. You do this all the time or very often in certain circumstances. You generally see yourself as a good person, as a nice guy, and you feel like it's your job to make sure everybody else feels good and comfortable, and you're very averse to anything that might upset that. You are plagued by the desire to get validation and to seek approval from others. That is, you want confirmation from other people that you're a good person, and you want other people to like you. You're willing to sacrifice your own integrity in order to get these outcomes. You generally are conflict avoidant and you fear rejection. You're constantly looking to avoid things like disgust, anger, awkwardness, dislike, disagreement, all the disses. You do everything in your power to make sure everyone's having a good time around you, or at the very least that they're not being upset by you. And because you're worried that if you go for what you want, you're going to get rejected, you go for what you want in a covert way. You ask things indirectly, you sulk to get your way, you hint at what you want, you do good things for people in the hope that they'll reciprocate rather than just asking them to do things. You can't really go for things directly. How does this syndrome develop? Well, like all things, it starts in childhood. There's lots of different types of childhoods that can lead to nice guy syndrome, but generally it's about a childhood experience where you had to earn love and approval. It wasn't given unconditionally, or you were in such a chaotic emotional environment as a kid that you felt it was your job to kind of smooth everything out and make everything pleasant, or at least try to stop things from being so chaotic. So you learned that you have to do things to get love that's not given freely, and that conflict must be prevented and avoided as much as possible. From this, you develop certain attachment styles or patterns with people around love and friendship. The most common combination I see is that of both avoidant and anxious, and that is you're afraid of intimacy, you don't want people to get too close and get to know you too personally. That's why you don't share emotions, that's why you're not honest all the time. And at the same time, you don't want to be alone and you don't want to be abandoned, so you're needy as well. And you generally fluctuate between these two depending on how close somebody is getting or how far away they're getting. Again, this comes from childhood. If we had a parent who was smothering us, then we find intimacy very suffocating. And then if we had a parent, usually the father, who was emotionally distant, we felt the need to try and get their attention and make them love us. Like we had to put this effort in to make it happen. We also got a combination of reward for compliance and being impressive, and punishment for non-compliance or upsetting people. So, like a dog, we were trained to try and seek approval because that's where we got rewarded, like doing well in school, being polite, making everybody laugh, and then also to avoid punishment. Okay, so if anything we did made somebody offended or disgusted or made them cry or made them angry, we automatically assumed that what we did was wrong objectively and that we had caused that harm. It doesn't occur to a child that maybe the other person has the problem. And all of this is going alongside the bad data in our mind where our imagination is making up a lot of things that aren't actually happening. We imagine getting rejected thousands of times. We imagine confrontations going so badly that we get hurt. We imagined everyone abandoning us because they find out some vulnerable weakness about us. And the mind isn't very good at establishing a difference between imagined data and real data. It just lumps them all together. So our inner reality is quite warped. It's made up mostly of imagined terrible social scenarios happening. Whereas if we had actually followed through and tested it in real life, it wouldn't have gone anywhere near as badly. And in fact, a lot of good things could have happened. But we missed out on those things because our mind told us that there was a high risk. It only takes a little bit of bullying or one narcissistic parent for a kid to think that everything is dangerous and that this represents how all people are. Let's talk a little bit about the costs of being a people-pleasing nice guy. Chronic anxiety and what we might call social hypervigilance. So this is where you are really worried all the time at some level, even if you're not really sure why. Sometimes it's very specific. You're worried that that girl will reject you if you look at her. Other times it's more a vague sense of unease whenever we're around other people. And this hypervigilance is where we're constantly watching for the signs that we're getting from other people. We're very worried about how they feel about us and about our reputation, so we feel the need to constantly measure that and be very concerned about what people are thinking and feeling, especially in relation to us, but even in relation to each other. We don't even like conflict with other people happening, so we're anxious about that even when we're not involved. Resentment and a sense of unfairness begins to build, and by the time you're an adult, it's become this great weight on your shoulders where you really feel like you've been hard done by in terms of the hand you've been dealt by the universe. Feels like you've been doing everything right and getting none of the rewards while all the bad people are getting rewarded unreasonably. You feel like you're the one putting in most of the effort and it's not being reciprocated. You feel like you've paid your dues and you're not getting your return on investment. This can lead you to destroy relationships, friendships, to have what's called a puke, where you suddenly explode with rage for no reason over something minor. Because in the background, you're constantly building up the story about how unfair life is and how you're the poor victim. Loneliness. Because we keep everything at a kind of a distance, superficial, we don't allow people to get too close and intimate. We use things like humor and good grades and playing it safe emotionally and being platonic to avoid any kind of things like rejection or conflict. We end up being quite isolated. Some nice guys look like they have a lot of friends. They might even look like they're married to a partner and have kids. But inside, they feel like a unit of one. They feel like an alien hiding amongst the humans, pretending to be one of them. And this feeling increases over time the more you apply this methodology. Sexual performance issues, whether it's something like erectile dysfunction, or on the other end of the spectrum, an obsession with sex, where that's the most important thing and it's all you think about, and sometimes both, where sex becomes this huge deal in your life that kind of measures how well you're doing as a man, and it's all that really matters to you. And yet there's a kind of sickening unease about it, like there's something unhealthy going on here. And of course, very weak boundaries and a lack of respect, both from yourself and from others, meaning you're more attractive to abusive people, you repel confident people, and you generally don't get your way because you allow yourself to be walked on, which makes you resent both yourself and others. The biggest problem I've really seen in my work is that nice guys don't realize that they have this problem. They think of themselves as the good guy in the story. They're loyal, they're kind, they're compassionate, they're funny, they're helpful. They think, I'm doing everything that the prince in the Disney movies did. Like, why am I not getting the princess kind of thing? And they've created this self-image to avoid the truth of what they're doing. The truth is that they're manipulative and covert and deceptive, that they're fearful and often acting from a place of anxiety, and that they're incredibly needy, and that this would be very obvious to them if they could see themselves from the outside. It's very clear that the story they have about being this great guy is not actually how they appear in the real world, and that the fact that it's used as a manipulation to get what they want is actually quite obvious to everyone. Now, the great tragedy with nice guy syndrome is what I call the backfire. Everything you do as a nice guy, the whole methodology, causes the very problems you're trying to prevent and prevents the very solutions you're trying to cause. Socially, romantically, and professionally, it backfires. For a start, people aren't stupid. They can feel that it's forced and fake. And they might go along with it because it's entertaining and pleasant to be around and comfortable, just like people don't mind having the TV on in the background while they're socializing. But they also aren't going to get intimate with you because they can sense that something's off. They don't trust you, they don't respect you. You're more like a stand-up comedian than a best friend. You can't connect emotionally, and the connections are emotional. So everything you have is superficial and light, easily put down. Somebody will leave you for someone else without feeling too bad about it because they don't really know you, All you do is ask questions and make them laugh and help them out, but you're not actually sharing any of your dark side. And if you don't have a dark side, then there's nothing really human about you. So what ends up happening is you're nice to be around, but you're nothing special. And you think nice to be around is enough, that people will love you because you're pleasant to be around. You've been conditioned to think that keeping people in the pleasant range of emotions is what they want. Some people even told you that that's what they want. Unfortunately, they were either unintentionally or intentionally lying to you. People need a range of emotions to feel connected to someone, and you're simply not giving them that range. You're boring. You're clearly performance based rather than value based. And that is, you're clearly always trying to get outcomes. You're trying to make something happen that makes you feel good rather than doing something from a sense of honor and principles and core values and integrity. And people can feel that. And even when people can't feel that, this destroys yourself inwardly. You don't really have a sense of who you are. You're constantly off track from what you believe in. You're constantly compromising yourself to make other people happy. How can you like yourself if you're doing that all the time? You don't respect yourself because you invalidate what you want, and because you allow your boundaries to be crossed and you don't lead. And because of this, other people just can't respect you. It's just really, really hard, even for decent people, to respect someone who doesn't respect themselves. You might think that your self-deprecating humor is funny, but they know that you mean it. And because of that, they really struggle to see you as anything better than you see yourself. Even the well-intentioned people. And really confident people are just going to find you exhausting and fake, and they're not going to hang out with you. So you're only going to end up being surrounded by other damaged people who basically feel sorry for you or want to abuse you. I think that's the worst thing socially, is you're going to attract the people who match you in terms of psychological health. So you're going to get into relationships and friendships with people that are going to be as damaged as you are. And you're actually going to pat yourself on the back for being the most healthy and the most solid because you seem to be the one who never struggles. You're the one who never has a problem with anything and you're so easygoing. You're going to look like the rock while everybody else is flailing when actually you are as fucked up as they are. By the way, if you're ready to break free of this and do the work, apply for a one-to-one coaching session with me where no obligation, I'll help you smash through this and at least get you started. These sessions are completely free, but they are very limited, so apply right away, dan@brojo.org. Tell me your story. Now look, the reason I do this kind of work is because this is me. My whole 20s basically were thrown down the toilet socially because of nice guy syndrome. I didn't even realize I had it until my mid to late 20s. I am the poster boy. If you read No More Mr. Nice Guy by Robert Glover, nearly every word in that book applied to me personally. But slowly and surely, I figured it out and I figured out how to break free of it. I made my peace with the fact that most of my beliefs were bullshit. That the stories I told myself about trying to make other people happy and avoiding conflict and being funny and impressing people with achievements, all of that came from a very sick and unhealthy place, and it wasn't who I really was. I had to suppress my true self to be that guy that everybody liked. And that true self was always in there. I knew who he was when I was a little kid, but I lost it along the way because there were so many people I felt like I had to manage, and there's so many threats in the social world that I felt I had to prevent. The crazy thing is, once you work your way through this, you don't become a jerk. You don't become a bad guy. You actually become more generous and you do more good than you've ever done as a nice guy. But you're also confident and assertive, and you'll realize that those are actually the missing pieces for you to have a real impact. You won't lose the niceness, you're going to lose the fakeness and let the real kindness come through. I want to finish with a little story. A client of mine, we'll just call him S to keep him anonymous. He loved women so much. There's some nice guys who are misogynistic, but vast majority of us actually worship women. It's like the opposite of misogyny, and he was one of these. But he was so afraid of hurting their feelings or being seen as creepy that he could only be very safely platonic with them. So he so often had female friends, but was in what we call the friend zone. He was romantically into them, but they didn't know about it or pretended not to know about it and treated him as a friend. And he had to sit and suffer in silence and frustration with this. By the time he came to me, he was a 30-year-old virgin who had never been in a relationship, and yet he was surrounded by women his entire life. He slowly came to realize that he handled women as if they were fragile, as if their emotions were his to manage, that if they were to ever get upset, that full range of emotions like frustrated, sad, depressed, anxious, he had failed somehow. And he realized, no, they're allowed to feel those feelings. He doesn't have to do anything about them. So I started showing him how to be a bit more honest and firm with his boundaries to trigger off those kind of emotional responses with just truthfulness. And slowly but surely, he developed the courage to do this. It's been about 7 years since I first met him. He's now married to his dream partner and he's got a second baby on the way. So he might have looked like a very hopeless, deep in the pit of nice guy syndrome case when I first met him. But with just a bit of courage and honesty, he was able to find his way through, and I'm sure you can too. Let's now explore approval seeking and validation seeking for nice guys, how it destroys their relationships and their confidence, and what they can do differently. This is part 2 of our Nice Guy Recovery series. After coaching people pleasers for like 10 years now, I've seen that they work on an operating system that constantly backfires, causing all the things that they're trying to prevent, like conflict, rejection, low self-worth, and loneliness. In this video, we're going to talk about how you can rewire that system so that it stops backfiring on you. So if you're a nice guy or a people pleaser, I want you to start understanding that you have this operating system, something that was conditioned from childhood and reinforced thousands and thousands of times ever since you were young. You've had it for so long and used it for so long that you're not aware that some other way could even exist, that you're starting to think about it. It starts with a basic urge to avoid discomfort and conflict, any sort of social disharmony. That's the kind of baseline framework of belief system. So the fact that you're starting from there already significantly limits your decision-making options. From there, you move into a basic methodology. Either seek approval and validation from others, that is, find other people to like you and tell you that you're a good person, or avoid disapproval and invalidation. Very similar technique where you go about trying not to upset other people and trying to not make them think of you as a bad person. From this methodology comes the tactic of hiding your flaws and trying to impress people with real strengths or pretend ones. So you carefully try to figure out what it is that people always like, what kind of traits that people always respond pleasantly to, and so you show those traits whether they're real or not. This leads you to constantly perform. You're basically always trying to manage everyone else's feelings with a kind of role that you're playing in their life, trying to perform and give them what they want, give them the show that they enjoy the most. And as this happens and you expect your rewards and you don't get those rewards you expect, you start to build up resentment. This resentment makes you feel like you're doing everything right, but it's not working. So you go back to the drawing board to think, well, maybe I should do even more of it. Of course, if you want to go deeper into everything we're talking about in this series, make sure to grab your copy of the Nice Guy Recovery course. It's completely free. The link's in the description or the comments below. So this operating system basically achieves two main things. They're not what you're trying to achieve, but this is what happens. It destroys your self-confidence and it kills anybody's attraction for you. I don't just mean romantic, but even the kind of interest and love and respect that comes from a friend. Now, the reason it destroys your confidence is because you are never backing yourself. You're always a reaction to other people. They're always leading, you're always following. And for that reason, you can't trust yourself. It creates an anxiety, a chronic, compulsive anxiety, because you're never really making decisions. You're just reacting to people in a way that you hope they will like, which means when you look forward into the future, you're not looking forward into a person that you can trust. You're not seeing a person in the future who's going to handle things very well because you know that person needs somebody else to lead them. You're just doubting yourself all the time because you act as somebody who can't be trusted. Of course, people can feel this neediness, and only the most damaged people are going to find it attractive. Everybody else can feel that desperation in you, that you're trying to get their approval. Even when you think you're playing cool, calm, and collected. I was pretty good at acting. I was like the funny, nonchalant guy, a bit like Chandler Bing from Friends. And now it's kind of amazing to me that I thought that other people didn't see that it was an act. Like, no one is that cool with everything. No one's that funny all the time. No one has that limited range of emotional experience. It was clear to others that I was avoiding conflict and trying to be liked. It just wasn't clear to me that it was clear to them. And they liked being around me. I was pleasant to be around. I was fun, all that kind of stuff, but not someone you'd want to get deep and intimate with. Let's contrast that operating system from what I'd call integrity, which is living in accordance with your core values and principles. And this is the biggest conflict or cognitive dissonance in the nice guy mind is he tries to tell himself he's a good person, but he's constantly breaching his own integrity. He's dishonest and deceptive and breaks his own principles. So he has to constantly try and reconcile that with being a good person and lie to himself about what he's doing. A person of integrity, that man never has to lie to himself about what he's doing. He never has to justify his behavior to himself or anyone else. The nice guy's constantly telling himself stories about what he's doing. Valued living is self-guided. You act, you don't react. You've already decided what you're going to do regardless of what the other person's reaction's going to be. Whereas the nice guy decides on their reaction first and then works backwards to try and achieve the reaction they want. The man of integrity is a leader. He goes first and then sees what happens, whereas the nice guy imagines what will happen and then comes up with a plan to manage that. A man of integrity is highly respected and attractive. Now, he won't be liked by everyone like the nice guy will be, but he will be loved by some and absolutely hated by others. He will be polarizing because he'll be a very strong personality. And I don't mean that he'll be obnoxious necessarily, but that he will not wiggle to suit somebody else. He won't compromise to make the other person feel comfortable. So you either have to be okay with him being like that, or you have to be aligned with him. Otherwise, you can't be around him. Whereas the nice guy is like a chameleon. He will adapt to any environment he's in. He will be whatever it is you are most comfortable being around. That doesn't mean he'll be what you're actually attracted to, but you won't mind being around him. Like sitting on a beanbag chair. It's nice, but you wouldn't marry it. Most importantly, the guy of integrity is willing to lose. He's willing to lose outcomes, results, approval from others. He's willing to not get the result in order to be okay with himself. He's willing to take a risk. He's willing to get hurt. The nice guy's not willing to get hurt or even uncomfortable. He's not willing to lose anything. He is obsessed with control. He must get what he wants, which is approval and validation. And there is nothing too low for him to do in order to achieve that. Now, the problem most men have when they're on this operating system is at some point, usually in their 20s or 30s, they realize this operating system doesn't work. They've been trying it for a long time. It was okay as a kid. It kept their crazy parents in order or stopped them from getting bullied. In high school, at least, it maybe created a few friends or avoided getting ostracized. But by the time you get into adulthood, it really starts to break down. It just doesn't work very well. You either don't have relationships or you have relationships that are very dysfunctional and unsatisfying. The problem is the guy tries to fix this system while still working within the operating system. So his solution is just do more of it. When he sees that being nice and pleasant and hiding his emotions doesn't work, he tries to be even nicer and be even more impressive and hide his emotions even more effectively. He just doubles down on the thing that doesn't work because occasionally it seems to work and he thinks he just needs more input to get better results. Rather than seeing that it's never really worked, it's just sometimes he gets pleasant outcomes and he thinks that that's a good life. And really, it's just instant gratification. See, it's not possible to break out of the system if you keep prioritizing your comfort, because the system's all built around making comfort happen. Of course, it doesn't actually create comfort. You have a very uncomfortable life. It's very unpleasant the way you're living. But every now and then somebody smiles at your joke or says that you're a good guy, and that's enough juice to keep you going. You're looking too much at the short-term comfort rather than long-term quality of life. You're sacrificing being the guy you want to make somebody smile right now. And you're not seeing the cost of making that sacrifice so many tens of thousands of times. You avoid conflict because you think it's bad for connection, but this operating system is flawed. Conflict is necessary for connection. You can't have a deep connection without occasionally butting heads with somebody. You have to find those disagreeable points to work through them in order to get deeper. And because you won't allow those points to happen, you just can't get deep with people. You bowing down all the time doesn't make them like you more. It just makes them comfortable right here and now so that you can relax. You're basically trying to prevent emotions rather than experience life. And in preventing emotions, all you do is stop life from happening. You're kind of dying while your body still functions. Remember, if you're really ready right now to make these kind of brave changes, get in touch, dan@brojo.org, to have a look if there's any free trial coaching sessions available this month. I want to finish with a story. The guy I was working with, we'll call him A to keep him anonymous. He was a classic nice guy in a marriage. So some nice guys struggle with women, some get married or are constantly in monogamous relationships. His wife just couldn't seem to be pleased, and every time she was displeased, he just dialed it up. He bought her lots of gifts. He rushed around trying to do everything, so she never had any tasks around the house to do. He always tried to win her over, essentially. And whenever she was upset, he would just double down on whatever tactics he was using. And he was getting really frustrated and resentful because she seemed to like him less and less as time passed, even though by his measure, he was getting better and better at doing these amazing things that occasionally got a pleasant reaction from her. So his relationship worsened the harder he tried, and it didn't occur to him until much later to think that maybe him trying was the problem. His best performance wasn't good enough. She was hypercritical, she never satisfied, and yet he kept on doing the same old thing. His breakthrough came from realizing that he just wasn't being authentic. That all the stuff he was trying to do, it wasn't what he really wanted to do. It's just he wanted her to be happy, but the stuff was not something he would have done unless it made her happy. Once he realized that he was doing this just to make her happy, that his whole existence centered around her emotional state, he came to the truth, which is he didn't even know what he wanted. He just knew that this wasn't it. So he made the switch. He started putting aside managing her feelings for her and decided instead to prioritize what he wanted to make his life high quality. The marriage didn't survive. Too much damage had already been done. He had lost her respect. She resented him greatly. He resented her greatly. And he had lost himself. There's kind of no coming back from it when it's that damaged. But now they have an amicable co-parenting situation going, and he has moved on to dating wonderful women and being himself while he does it, showing her his true feelings, his desires, his preferences, and not trying to win them over anymore, at least not too often. He's understood that putting himself first and embracing that conflict is actually what's best for everyone in the long run. That it actually is what's best for his partner and his children and anybody else. That sometimes being a man means upsetting people now to get the big picture healthy. We're going to have a look at how to be a confident man by exploring what it means to live with integrity. This is so that you never doubt yourself or get disrespected or lose sight of who you are again. This is part 3 of the Nice Guy Recovery series. In my work as a confidence coach, I've seen each and every one of the nice guys that I've worked with have compromised who they are for so long that they've completely lost sight of it. They have no idea what confidence even means because they've spent their whole life living another way. They've all had to sacrifice who they really are in order to make other people like them and to get approval and validation, and they just didn't realize at the time how bad that sacrifice was. Of course, the end result is they lose who they are and they don't even get the results they were going for. They ruin their connections and their social standing and reputation by being this way, so they end up with nothing at all. I can give you the way to build confidence in 2 words. Impress yourself. Confidence is about behaving according to your core values in spite of all the barriers you feel, both internally and externally. All of the things you fear, all of your insecurities and your shames, these are just barriers to overcome to do what you know is the right thing to do. And if you constantly live in alignment with the right thing to do by your measure, your standards, you will impress yourself. And then you won't need anybody else to feel that way about you. But walking this path means upsetting people. It means sometimes losing the outcome you wanted to get. It means getting rejected. It means even being unfairly misunderstood where people hate you for all the wrong reasons. That's the price you have to pay if you want to be a confident person. By the way, if you haven't yet, make sure you get involved in the free Nice Guy Recovery course, the long version. The link is in the description or the comments below. Get on top of that immediately. I want to make confidence as simple as possible for you, specifically if you're a people pleaser or a nice guy. The number one rule, be more honest. Powerful honesty is basically the cure to all your confidence issues. It will cause you to face all of your insecurities and overcome them. And in doing so, you will constantly have integrity. It's almost impossible to lack integrity while you're being honest. And to get very practical, the kind of honesty we're talking about is expressing your true preferences. This is what I call the number one cure to nice guy syndrome. What you really want, what you really don't want, what you like, what you dislike, what you agree with, what you disagree with. If you can be honest about these preferences at all times, no matter the social cost, you will become a confident person. You might call this micro-honesty. It's a safe way to rewire your entire psyche without it feeling like too much of a leap at any one time. Who you are is your preferences. Your preferences are like a blueprint of your true self. It's kind of like a fingerprint. Everybody has thousands and thousands of preferences, and I bet that there are no two people on earth who have the complete set exactly the same. If we were able to somehow map out everybody's preferences, we could use that like identification. There would be nobody else like you who exactly likes everything exactly the way you like it, who exactly agrees with all of your beliefs, who exactly wants what you want. When you respect your preferences, and I don't mean you always get what you want, but you're always honest about it, you're validating your identity. You're saying, this is who I am and I'm okay with it. And anytime you compromise your preferences, even just being honest about them to avoid upsetting somebody else, you blur the lines as to who you are. You create a split. I'm this person, but I said I want that. Those aren't the same thing. If you do this thousands and thousands of times, no wonder you lose sight of who you are. This is what I call self-disrespect. You're disrespecting who you really are. And of course, inviting other people to do that as well. Integrity means no split. You are who you are, regardless of the context. You're the same person no matter who's with you and how they might feel about that. You should be the same person at the pub as you are at the funeral, as you are at the office, as you are sitting at home with your kids. I should not see any difference as to your central traits and your preferences when I'm observing that person. But most people play a different role with every person they're with, even every situation they're in. You've got the work version of yourself, and then you've got individual versions of that for everyone you work with. You're split and fractured into so many fucking pieces. How on earth are you supposed to know which one's real? I'll tell you, none of them are. Problem solved. The literal definition of integrity is mean that all the pieces are together and there's honesty. And integrity creates confidence. Confidence is the byproduct of consistent integral living. When you hold strong instead of being that chameleon that adapts to every environment, you'll start to believe in yourself. You'll know who you are. You'll feel you can trust yourself in the future to keep being the way that you've been. And other people's approval and validation will start to lose its importance to you. You'll start to realize that impressing yourself is so much more fucking rewarding than making somebody laugh by being fake. Most importantly, you'll develop the sense of a center, of a kind of net zero position where this is who I really am. A kind of foundation that you can make decisions from without wondering, what am I doing? What do I really want? What's the point of me being here? That shift, that sense of getting on track, of being sure of who you are, that boldness, it eventually leads you to caring so little about what others think that you just don't actually care at all. And I don't mean that you're not interested in what people think. It just doesn't become a measurement of who you are at all. It seems like invalid information, which of course it is. Nobody knows who you should be. So their reaction to you is not helpful feedback at all. And ironically, you become more attractive, more generous and kind, easier to love, but also easier to hate. And you have to accept that price if you want to have confidence. As you lose that self-obsessed neediness for approval from other people, you'll start to figure out what it is you should be doing with your life and who you should be spending your time with, and you'll actually end up with more positive reactions because you'll be in alignment rather than constantly trying to force a square peg into a round hole. Let me give you one actionable step right now. Very practical. If this is all you remember from this entire series, it'll do you good. Tell one uncomfortable truth today that reflects your preferences. Like or dislike, want, don't want, agree, disagree. Just make sure it's uncomfortable, something you'd usually compromise on. Do that once a day, every day, for the rest of your life, and just watch what happens. Of course, if you want to accelerate your progress and get through this journey in months rather than years, get in touch and apply for a free trial coaching session, dan@brojo.org, and if there's any spaces available, we'll book that in. I want to quickly tell you about one of my clients. His name's James. And he was the kind of nice guy I really love working with, which is he was ready to make massive shifts as soon as he realized that this was a problem. He wasn't attached to being a nice guy. He just didn't know there was another way. And once he realized there was another way, he was all about it because being a nice guy wasn't working for him. And basically what he did is he just made one very small confession. He told a girl that he was attracted to her, a girl that he had never told this to before. He'd never really said this to any girl before, not directly. Anyway, he told this girl, and honestly, I can't remember what happened. But he realized he could handle the reaction. I think he got a generally what you'd call a negative reaction to it. But he realized it wasn't that big a deal, that he could handle that, and how he could finally sleep at night knowing that that matter was closed now. He didn't have a fantasy that he was keeping alive anymore. He'd finished it. And he felt such peace and relief, not only at finishing the fantasy and letting go of that pointless dream, but also in just knowing that he could handle saying what he really wanted out loud and deal with whatever reaction happened. I mean, that moment just spiked such a massive trajectory and change for him. It massively improved his dating life. He went from 0 to 100 or more. Massive confidence spike. He started being respected by people that had usually looked down on him, and he completely changed his career, all in the space of a few weeks. Now, not everyone makes changes that big and fast. Not everyone can handle that kind of change. But it all just centered around this tiny little piece of honesty that just basically broke open this whole new way of living that he didn't know was available to him. It broke all the rules he thought everyone had to follow. When he finally realized you don't have to do that. Just because everyone else is being fake and polite and playing by the rules doesn't mean you have to. It doesn't actually work very well. Small honesty can lead to massive transformation. So all I ask is that you test that out. You never have to do more than you can handle. Just get a little bit uncomfortable, see how you feel about it afterwards. What we're going to do now is map out the complete pathway from miserable people-pleasing nice guy through to bold, confident, authentic man with all the steps in between, so that you can become someone who's comfortable in his own skin, respected, basically loves himself. This is part 4 of our Nice Guy Recovery series. I've been coaching people since 2013, and I've realized that there is a standard pathway that each person can follow that will have little nuanced steps for each individual, but basically there is a process we go through to recover and to take those steps to become the guy we want to be. I'm going to share that with you now. Remember, if you haven't already, jump into the description or the comments, get the link to the free Nice Guy Recovery course to make sure that you can make the most progress possible. There's basically 5 stages that a person needs to go through, and each person will do so in their own time, in their own pace, with different practical methods. The first step is awareness. Before you can recover from nice guy syndrome, you have to realize how it manifests in your life, because it will be in almost everything you do. Stuff that you don't even think about will be influenced by this need for comfort and social safety. And so first you need to be aware of how it is that you are a nice guy. What you're looking for particularly are behavior patterns that try to control people socially, anything that's designed to manage people's emotions, and particularly you're looking for that nice guy backfire. You're looking for the things that seem to cause the problems that they're trying to solve. The thing that avoids rejection but leaves you alone. The thing that prevents conflict but leaves you with no connections and people get mad at you anyway. You're looking for those patterns where you're like, that doesn't even work or make sense and it isn't what I want to do anyway. You want to be really truthful with yourself. This is quite painful to do. Really, I can't emphasize that enough. It fucking hurts to look at yourself honestly. And when you see what you're doing and you see how ineffective it is and how fake and pointless it is, and how it's actually causing all the problems. It's very hard for your brain to accept that. It doesn't want to face the responsibility and the effort required to change all this stuff. So awareness is almost half the battle. From there, we need to figure out what to do differently. And this is where we do the core values work. I call it core values. You could call it principles, code of honor, anything you like. It's what you think it actually means to be a good person in your mind, not other people approving of you, but you approving of you. The kind of person you want to see. What traits do you want to see? What principles do you want to live by? What is your code of honor? What are your goals? What boundaries should you be enforcing? What would you do if you weren't afraid of what other people thought of you? And what do you think is the right thing to do? How do you wish everybody really was? I don't mean how would you make everyone nice and pleasant, but how should people be for the world to function well? Who do you think is a role model? Who do you admire? Why do you admire them? I don't mean people that you find pleasant, but people that you secretly wish you were more like, or you wish you had the balls to do the stuff that they do. What are those traits? Unpacking that work and coming up with a clear list of core values, a kind of foundation for decision making. My 6 core values are curiosity, courage, honesty, respect, responsibility, and acceptance. And in any given situation, I'm asking myself, which of these values apply and then what would it mean to live by them? I don't mean I think like that all the time, every day, but particularly when I'm reviewing my behavior, when I journal at the end of the day, I'm asking myself how well I live by those core values. And I'm easily able to identify when I was off and why that causes me suffering. Once you've identified your core values, the next natural step is behavior change. This is the never-ending step. It's a very difficult one, but it's all done in micro changes. So this is about being more honest, being more assertive. It's also about stopping pretending behaviors, about letting go of control of other people's emotions, about trying to avoid those patterns that you've slipped into so many times. It's about showing your emotions. It's about asking for what you want directly. It's about changing things that don't suit you, ending relationships, starting new ones. This is where you actually start to live by those core values and replace nice guy behaviors one at a time with confident behaviors. It's really just like a scale. You're just taking weight from one side and putting it over to the other, and eventually there is a tipping point, and you can feel this. You ask any one of my clients, there's a point where one week they still felt unconfident, and the next week they could feel the tip like, holy shit, I think I've got this now. It's a very exciting moment, but it takes a lot of work to move that weight over. If you think there's sort of 16 hours in a day that you're awake, if you started with 16 hours of nice guy people pleasing behavior, you want to get that down to 15 and a half hours. And that extra half hour is now a confident behavior. And you just want to keep changing that ratio until you're more confident than not. Confidence isn't about really how you feel, it's about what you do. Which brings us to the fourth step, and this is where the rubber really hits the road. It's these behavior changes, dialing them up, especially in social situations. So this is where it's all about being courageous with your social connections. Because nice guy syndrome is really a social syndrome. It's about other people, and that's where you have to do the real work. So this is about getting into conflict. It's about leadership, polarizing people. It's about getting deep and intimate and vulnerable with people. All those things you've been avoiding. This is where you dial that up until you become what I call shameless. Whereas you don't think there's anything wrong with you anymore. You don't care if everybody knows everything about you. You want to get to that point where eventually if your journal was published and everybody knew all of your secrets, you wouldn't give a fuck. And eventually this leads you to the final stage, the never-ending rest of your life, which is it's a shift in identity. So you are now a confident man, and it's up to you to keep behaving so. Right? This is where you maintain the behaviors. That nice guy in you is constantly going to be picking away, trying to assert control. You've got programming so deep in your brain from childhood that it never really fully goes away. And in moments of weakness and fear or unfamiliar situations, it leaps back in and grabs the control room, and you have to kind of wrestle it back. So this is about relapse prevention at this point. This is where you really go all in. You dial up the bravery, you make big changes to your career and your relationships. You might even move to another country. This is where you really go, okay, fuck it. This is where my second life begins, and I'm going to do it right this time. And each stage builds on the last. It's, in my opinion, not really possible to jump from one all the way to five. That it makes sense to do it in these incremental stages because the nice guy syndrome operating system is going to constantly try to interfere. And if you skip over one of the stages, the nice guy syndrome will actually pretend like it's the new system and use that against you. Like I've noticed, for example, a lot of nice guys will start being more honest, but they haven't actually thought about their values at all. They just jumped into honesty because I said honesty works. And then they realize they just start using honesty as a manipulative tool to make people like them. That is, they use truth to make people like them. It's not the same as being honest. Being honest is you tell them that you're manipulating them. Each stage needs to be built on to kind of cement up that foundation and give yourself something solid for the next stage. And you don't have to rush through this. There are some guys out there I've worked with who are so traumatized and damaged from horrific childhoods that going from one to five may take a decade or more, and that's fine. It'll take as long as it needs to take. There are other guys who just had some misfires in childhood, a bit of bullying or something. They weren't that badly affected, and they go from one to five in 3 months. I work with all of them. So you've just got to follow the stages. Be very aware and honest with yourself about your passions. Figure out what your core values are, start acting according to them, dial it up, and then maintain it. This is a repeatable framework. This isn't guesswork. This is 10 plus years working with hundreds of guys, including working on myself, and only keeping what works consistently for everyone. Of course, if you need a helping hand working through this framework and you want to make sure it does take months rather than years, get in touch, dan@brojo.org, and we'll meet for a free trial session to see if we're the right fit. I want to finish telling you a story about a client of mine female client actually, because nice guy syndrome may sound like it's about guys, but it's just a human syndrome. And she's one of the ones who've moved up the pathway very quickly. Now, she came from very, very, very rough childhood. I won't give you details because they're private, but the kind of worst kind of childhood a kid can have and still survive. And so she came out of that very unconsciously controlling. She came from such a chaotic situation that she was very controlling for her entire adult life. And as a result, she did very well because she's very capable and intelligent. But of course, it was always trying to impress other people and trying to control her emotions. She avoided conflict in the workplace, but she took it out on her loved ones at home. This is very common for people pleasers. One session we mapped out all of her patterns, what it is she does to sabotage her quality of life and her relationships. And she was just so open and humble, willing to listen, willing to get that feedback. Straight away, she's like, yeah, I can see it now. It's what kept her safe as a child because she had narcissistic, fucked up parents, but it doesn't actually work for healthy relationships. The second session, we decided her values. She decided that they were courage, I think assertiveness, honesty, and self-respect, as well as a kind of compassion element for her family at home. In between that, I think it was in between the second and third session, she did so much. So she went and came clean with her boss about her imposter syndrome. She started being more patient with her daughter. She confronted a toxic family member that she'd been tolerating for years, all in 1 week. And then after the fourth session, I think it was, she started like changing everything. So she got a new responsibility at work after that conversation with the boss. She completely broke the codependent dynamic she had with her husband, and they reset their boundaries with each other. And now she sees herself as an absolute beast. So in like 1 month, she went from 1 to 5. Now that's unusual. Usually 3 months is about the average for the people I work with. And she actually describes herself now as an absolute beast. Like that's how she feels about herself. She was so meek, so unsure of herself when we first met. She just needed to follow a structure to unlock what was that potential inside her. And now it's like I'm scared I've created a monster. Now, that pathway is a very quick version of what happens. She took very bold, very significant actions to make that pathway go quickly, but anyone can follow this pathway if they're willing to put in the work. We're now going to have a look at why guys who are building their confidence often take 7 times longer doing it on their own than those who access high quality support and resources. Why building confidence isn't an independent journey. We're going to explore what you can do to make sure that this journey goes as quickly as possible for you and you're not wasting time. This is the final part in the 5-part series on Nice Guy Recovery to build authentic confidence and become the man you've always wanted to be. Now, I've been running the Brojo men's self-development community since about 2014, and I've witnessed the difference between guys who do it all by themselves and guys who do it with support. And the difference is night and day. It's astonishingly different. In my own journey, I did it all on my own at first. It took me 7 years of just sort of reading and accessing resources passively and going and trying stuff on my own. And then when I finally switched to getting some coaching, the amount of progress I made in the next 6 months was more than that 7 years. I felt like I was just stupid for having done it on my own. All this being said, for those of you who are worried that I'm just trying to sell something, there is a free Nice Guy Recovery course. You can access it below in the comments and description. And you can do it all on your own if you insist. Let's talk a little bit about why nice guys fail when they're trying to do it all on their own. First off, and this is like anyone working on anything by themselves, it's the blind leading the blind. It's all the information you have giving you instructions. So if you don't have better information in there, then you can't possibly make better decisions. You're only going to work with what you've got. And even when you go to absorb passive material, you read books, watch videos, even do courses, it's still going to be that brain interpreting and filtering that information, deciding what to keep, how to understand it, how to translate it into what your new beliefs are going to be. And so there's going to be no external force saying, like, you missed something. One of the biggest barriers is that the nice guy system is so obsessed with staying in control, it will actually pretend to be your friend. It will pretend to be the new system. I saw this in myself and I've seen it in many others. So the nice guy system will realize that you're challenging it, and so will change to suit you and make you feel good. It will pretend that it's your friend. For example, people who start using honesty to control others. They now feel like they're being more honest, but controlling others is still the main goal. They haven't actually changed. Or like somebody who was like a really quiet, meek people pleaser, suddenly becoming a big extroverted show off and not realizing they're still trying to get approval. Need somebody outside of the system to drag you out. It's just like that movie, The Matrix. Like you don't know that you're in it. And you need someone else to show you when it's still operating. You gotta understand that the nice guy system's primary goal is to avoid emotional discomfort, or at least the anticipation of emotional discomfort, because it just doesn't want to accept the fact that the only way through is to do things that you feel very unfamiliar and unsure of and uncomfortable doing. You're going to have to get scared, and you're going to be working in an operating system that won't allow that. Of course, there's just going to be blind spots in your practical awareness as well. A lot of coaching is, of course, there's just going to be blind spots in your practical awareness as well. A lot of coaching is actually techniques and tactics. For example, if you want to learn how to connect with people by being yourself, that's not something you just fall into. You have to learn what it means to express yourself honestly. You have to learn how it is that you could share something vulnerable without fucking freaking someone out. The difference between sharing and oversharing, these are technical issues, and you need someone to train you, just like if you were learning to dance, you need someone to show you the steps. One of the main issues I notice is that the nice guy system will not allow you to get into confrontations. And confrontations are one of the main things you must do to break out of the system. You must upset other people with the truth. And if you're not allowed to do that, you can still make some progress, don't get me wrong. Like I said, I did 7 years on my own. But once you get into confrontations, like facing possible rejections or upsetting people or even making someone really angry, that's when your development really accelerates. Also, frankly, for nice guys, you need a masculine influence. If you had a healthy masculine influence growing up, you wouldn't be here right now. And because you've never had it, you've never embedded any of that kind of wisdom in your head. You can't make that stuff up on your own. And even when you watch it in videos or read it in books, your brain's just going to reject it as like being a jerk or, something else. So you're never going to really accept what it looks like because it's going to be very foreign to you. Things like assertiveness rather than aggression, these are going to be concepts that somebody else has to walk you through. Unfortunately, most of the online stuff is just bullshit. It's either really toxic alpha male guru shit, or it's just really unscientific nonsense to sell a course. Trying to like filter that on your own from a nice guy perspective, where the nice guy system itself is very lacking in critical thinking, it's tough. You're going to have to do a lot of trial and error. You're going to have to waste a lot of time, money, energy figuring out that the thing was bullshit. Accountability and outside guidance are essential. I mean, for a start, you have to be able to see yourself accurately to make these changes. You have to be very honest with yourself about your patterns, and patterns are very hard to see from the inner person perspective. Like, even though I coach people with this, I still need somebody else to help me find my patterns because my mind's too invested in my image of myself. It doesn't want to have a look at the bigger picture. It will dismiss evidence. It will tell me a story about who I am rather than show me who I am. Another person can show me who I am. A lot of the nice guy stuff is patterns that actually stretch over days, sometimes even weeks. So by the time the bad results happen, you don't realize that you started this process last Monday. It's very hard to have that kind of cosmic perspective. But somebody else will ask you, well, what was the build-up? And you'll see the pattern and they'll present it to you and you'll finally see it. You're also working in a belief system that's been embedded deep in your psyche since you were a child. There's an old joke about fish and water. One fish says, the water's cold today. And the other fish says, what the fuck is water? This is the water you've been in your whole life that you don't even realize exists. The whole nice guy universe around you is false. Politeness, for example, you probably think that's a good idea. Have you ever challenged the idea that being polite is also being fake? That you have to say thank you when somebody gives you a gift, even if you don't like the gift? These are the kinds of things that you just take for granted that these are immutable laws that can't be broken. You're in a universe that can't look at itself and see the malfunction. You're also probably surrounded by people who share your beliefs. Half of them are the ones who gave you those beliefs. So the people around you aren't going to be able to give you perspective because they're in the same program themselves. They can only see what you see. They also follow the rules. And there's some practical tips. One of the first things that happened when I got coaching was realizing that I had to figure things out with trial and error that one dude could have just shown me in an hour. When it came to, say, going up to a stranger and talking to them and getting to know them right from scratch while being completely honest, I had to do that piece by piece and with thousands and thousands of like really bad experiences, well, at least hundreds of bad experiences. Whereas one guy could have taken me out for an afternoon and just obliterated all of that because he's already done it for 10 years. Just stand on the shoulders of giants. When you get coaching or accountability from a group or something like that, no one's going to be trying to spare your feelings. Some therapists can even be guilty of trying to like make their client feel good about the session. It's what I like about coaches over therapists in general, is a coach is willing to upset you. The coach is willing to, lose you as a client by telling you the truth. And there are some hard truths you're going to have to fucking face, man. Like brutal stuff that you are not going to like hearing about at all because it's going to undermine the image you've had of yourself your whole life. But somebody has to tell you this stuff. All those people who have told you your whole life that you're such a nice person and they don't understand why it's not working out for you, they're trying to protect your feelings. They know there's a problem. They're not confused. They just don't want to tell you the truth. You need people who are going to come in and say, like, dude, this is your fault. Look, you're doing this, this, and this. No wonder it's not working. And having guidance from somebody else also will help you skip the bullshit stuff. There are a lot of dead ends I went down. I went down the kind of red pill pickup artist thing. That was a dead end. Talk therapy, waste of time for guys like us because we just identify with our problems and bathe in them. There are things that you don't even need to bother exploring because they just don't work at all, but it'll take you years to figure that out if you were to try it on your own. So, what coaching and support from others actually fixes is all the stuff that keeps the system up, avoidance of discomfort. You will have to get uncomfortable if you work with a coach. It doesn't mean you'll be terrified, but you will break the rule that everything must be emotionally safe all the time. The technical and mental barriers to acting with courage. Courage is a main factor in this development. Courage is one of the probably top two or three main pillars of self-confidence. But courage doesn't mean you have to force yourself to do something you're terrified of doing. It's actually more of a kind of intelligence. It's a tactical way around your fear to make sure you do the thing that you're afraid of doing without setting off too much panic. Sure, you will be uncomfortable and a bit hesitant, but if you know the technicalities of courage, which someone can help you with, then you can make these changes without pushing yourself too hard and losing faith. Coaching will help you with your lack of clarity on your values. What I love being able to do as a coach is talking to someone and I can see who they really are, but I also can see that they can't see that. And I can help reflect back to them the times where they were proud of themselves, the times where they were being the person they know they should be. Help them see that they have that capability, that they know who that is and how to be it. They're just not doing it enough. Coaching will help you get over your weak inner boundaries, the deception you put yourself through that enables people-pleasing behavior. I'd say 90% of my coaching sessions are about calling out the lies somebody has told themselves that keeps them stuck. Once you see that those things are lies, it frees you up to be less limited. You now have more options in what you can do because you're not believing the limitations your mind's telling you about. Coaches can also call out just some of your basic methodology problems. A classic one for nice guys is that relationship means making a woman happy. That's a very tactical mistake. That's not the aim of a relationship, right? And if you can just shift that compass from trying to make the girl happy to trying to have a high quality of life with somebody else, your decision making just gets so much more intelligent. And last but not least, what I'd call identity confusion. When I meet someone, what I'm looking for is who they really are. And all the noise and bullshit and conditioning and programming that's been just packed on top of that. And they can't see it because they're in all of that mess. But I can. And I can show that to them. They're actually showing it to me and I'm just reflecting it. But I can clarify it so they know how to act on it. When guys like us finally open up to some guidance, some influence from someone we trust and respect, things just start happening immediately. We start having those aha moments, that just clarity where something that made no sense suddenly makes sense. Some system that was backfiring, we finally see why it doesn't work. And it's so obvious what we should be doing instead. There'll be so many things that have frustrated you your whole life that somebody can just go, oh, it's because of this. And you just blows your mind when you realize, oh, how simple it is. How did I not see it? Getting a clear pathway that you can trust. That's one of the hardest things is we'll go dabble in different self-development ideas, but we've always got kind of one foot back because we're just not sure if this is worth the effort and investment. We're not sure it's going to get to where we want to go. We're scared that we're just going to go down another pointless rabbit hole. What a coach can help you do is map out a pathway where you think, shit, that's actually going to work. So I can do the step one knowing that it's going to lead to five and not worry that step one's a waste of time. You can learn how to desensitize yourself to fear rather than pushing yourself too hard so that you can make sustainable progress and growth over time without hitting this wall where you just get exhausted and burn out. Especially in group situations, you can see evidence of men who are further along the pathway that you're on and get that kind of validation from seeing like this is working for him and I'm doing the same shit he was doing. So we're going there, we're on the way. If you get into a good enough group, you can see people from 0 to 100. You can see all those steps in between and see that like this is going to work. I just got to follow the steps. One of the things I really love to do as a coach is help relieve people of the burden of their childhood beliefs, especially the not good enough type beliefs that they've been burdened with. I can show people that the beliefs they carry don't need to be carried anymore, that you can drop them, that they're not real, and all the weight that they put on your shoulders, you can just take that weight off, and then it's so much easier to move along, even on your own, when you're not weighted down by all the bullshit that someone else taught you. And one of the main shifts is just a kind of critical thinking that happens where you start to distrust all that noise that your mind makes, start to challenge it and face the evidence of what's true in the world. And you can change your perspective in such a dramatic way. Like one thing that nearly always happens when I'm working with someone after a long enough time is the idea of rejection just disappears. That you can live in a world where there is no such thing as rejection. Even though you're going for what you want and people are saying no to you, the idea that you're being rejected is completely a perspective problem. You can get to a point where that doesn't exist. There's nothing to be afraid of. Now, obviously, this series is in part marketing. I want it to help you guys, but it's also marketing my services. But I want to make sure that nobody's signing up because they feel conned, that this is exactly what's going to help you. So we can do a low risk trial if you want. All right, everyone gets a free trial session, but if you're really not sure, if you want to see results before you're ready to invest, you can do a low investment trial where you get a taste of what it's like, and then the results will prove themselves without any risk to you. Now, I only offer this to a couple of people per month, so you may have to go on a wait list, but get in touch if you're interested, dan@brojo.org. And I finally finish up with one more client story about a guy I worked with, Simon. And I've actually worked with him. He's one of the ones I've worked with the longest, many, many years. So he did the online self-improvement thing for most of his 20s. He read lots of books, he watched lots of videos on YouTube, and he had pretty much zero progress, as most people do when they're just absorbing information and hoping it'll do something. For 10 years, he was single. For most of his 20s, he was alone, terrified of conflict and rejection. One session with me, he ended the friend zone he had been in for 5 years. It had been plaguing his life. 10 sessions with me, he had lost his virginity and had a robust dating life, and he knew who the fuck he was. 1 year later, he'd met the woman of his dreams just using total honesty, not having to try at all. 4 years later, he's married with kids. He does all these great hobbies. He's doing excellent in his career, and he's just never been happier. Now, he is a pretty classic case of about as bad as it gets for nice guy syndrome. 10 years on his own, no progress. 3 or 4 years, life of his dreams. That's the difference it makes working with someone else. That person doesn't have to be me. I know I'm selling my shit here, but if you want to work with someone else, that's fine. Just work with someone. Join a men's group or get a coach or something who knows nice guy syndrome, somebody who understands what confidence building is really about, who's done the walk themselves, from zero. Get someone else to help you. It will save you so much time, effort, and money in the long run than it is doing it on your own. I've done it both ways. Getting help's the best way. Coming up next is a long podcast about my whole life story as a nice guy. You can check that out. Thank you so much for watching the series.